My mother threw my clothes onto our lawn in the middle of the night and stood on the front porch screaming, "Get out of here, Emily, right now." A light rain was falling, my jeans were lying in the wet grass, my work shirts were smeared with mud near the edge of the driveway, and my stepfather Richard was standing under the yellow garage light with his arms folded like this was some kind of neighborhood show. I looked at my mother. "Mom, are you serious right now?" She screamed, "Don't call me Mom. The day you broke the rules of my house was the day you stopped being my daughter." I was 26. I lived in a small suburb in Ohio. The house was not mine, and she reminded me of that every other day, but I paid bills, brought in groceries, and for the last 3 months, I had even paid Richard's truck insurance. That night I had come home from a double shift at Applebee's. My shoes smelled like grease, my hands smelled like sanitizer, and I had only $18 in cash in my purse. If you have ever stood outside your own house and wondered where you were supposed to go next, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what my mother did to me that night 8 years later, she was standing at that same gate asking me for an answer. I said, "What did I do?" Richard laughed. "You know what you did. Don't play dumb." "No, I don't know," I said. "I left at 6 in the morning and came back at 11 at night." "What did I do?" My mother picked up another basket of my clothes and dumped the whole thing across the lawn. My black dress, socks, underwear, all of it scattered over the wet grass. Mrs. Patterson's porch light came on next door. He was standing behind the curtain watching. My mother said, "You put your hands on Richard." I stood still. "What?" Richard rubbed his left cheek. "You got violent." I looked at him. "You're lying." My mother screamed, "Enough. I have put up with your attitude long enough. You are poison in this house." I said quietly, "Mom, he stole my debit card. I only asked him about it." Richard jumped in immediately. "See? There she goes again." I pulled my phone out of my purse. "I'm calling the police." My mother took 2 steps forward and said, "Call them. I'll tell them you hit my husband." Richard smiled. "Go ahead, Emily. Try me." It was the same smile he always gave when he was sure no one would stand against him. My mother was standing with him. My own mother. I put my phone back in my purse. I bent down and picked up a few of my clothes. Wet jeans, a hoodie, 2 shirts. I left the rest lying on the lawn. My mother said, "Give me the keys." I said, "They're my car keys." "The house keys," she said, holding out her hand. "And the garage opener too." I took the house key off my keychain, placed it in her palm and said, "One day you're going to remember this." She laughed. "Oh please. You'll be back in 2 days apologizing." I looked her in the eyes. "No, I won't." Richard said, "Good. Finally some peace." I threw my clothes into my Honda Civic, sat in the driver's seat and shut the door. Raindrops were hitting the windshield. There was an empty Taco Bell cup inside the car. The gas tank was below a quarter. I started the car. My mother stood on the porch watching me. He did not even wave. I slept in a Walmart parking lot that night. At 4 in the morning I woke up with a stiff neck and my hoodie was still damp. There were no missed calls from my mother on my phone. Only a text from my friend Jessica. "You okay? Your mom posted something weird." I opened Facebook. My mother had written, "Sometimes you have to remove toxic people from your home even if they are family. Praying for peace." People were writing in the comments, "Stay strong, Karen. You did the right thing. Adult children can be so ungrateful." My own Aunt Linda commented, "Emily always had a mouth." I turned off my phone. Jessica called. "Where are you?" I said, "Walmart." "Which Walmart?" "Westerville." "Don't move. I'm coming." When she arrived, she had Starbucks coffee in one hand and a paper bag in the other. She opened my car door and said, "Get in my car." I said, "My clothes." "Leave them." "Emily, get in the damn car." I went with her. She let me sleep on the couch in her apartment. 3 days later I rented a motel room. Then I worked 2 jobs. Mornings at a diner, nights packing boxes in a warehouse. Sometimes my feet hurt so badly that I sat down in the shower. But I did not call my mother. Jessica would say, "You need to at least get your birth certificate." I would say, "She won't give it to me." "Then get it legally." "I don't have money for a lawyer." One night Richard texted me, "Your mother is crying because of you." I replied, "Tell her she knows my number." He wrote back, "Don't be smart." I blocked his number. Slowly I understood that none of it had happened in one night. Richard came into my life when I was 19. Dad had been gone for 2 years. My mother was lonely. Richard was charming. He volunteered at church, brought casseroles to potluck dinners and called every woman ma'am. At first he called me kiddo. Then he started saying, "You spend too much." Then, "You're too old to be living here." Then, "Your mother needs peace, not your attitude." I still remember one Thanksgiving dinner. I said, "I want to go back to community college." My mother said, "That's great, honey." Richard set his fork down on the table. "With what money?" I said, "I'm saving." He laughed. "You can't even save yourself from overdraft fees." Everyone went quiet. My mother only said, "Richard, don't start." But he had already started. From that day on. Later he convinced my mother that my bank account was irresponsible. Then he said I should pay rent. I paid it. Then utilities. Then groceries. Then his truck repair. When I asked why I had to pay for his truck repair, my mother said, "He drives me to appointments. Don't be selfish." Once when I was alone with my mother, I said, "He's using us." She instantly got defensive. "He loves me." "Mom, love doesn't mean he gets to take my card." She said, "You're jealous. You have a problem with me having someone in my life." I said, "You can't be serious." She said, "I am. And I don't need your negativity." The lawn drama that night had actually started with my debit card. $640 had been taken from my account. A gas station, a liquor store, and a hardware store. I asked Richard, "Did you use my card?" He was watching TV and said, "No." I said, "They can pull camera footage." He put the remote on the table and stood up. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm asking about my money." He came very close to me. "You live under my roof." I said, "It's not your roof. It's Mom's house." That was when he went outside, called my mother, and made up a story that I had hit him. My mother came home from work and my clothes were on the lawn. It was a pattern. I saw it late. Over the next 8 years I built my life slowly and stubbornly. First I finished my GD. Then I took online business classes. Then I started a cleaning service. In the beginning I cleaned houses myself. Toilets, kitchens, pet hair, basement floors, all of it. Then one client told me, "You're more organized than any company I've hired." I laughed and said, "That's because I can't afford to mess up." That client's name was Mr. Bennett. He was a real estate investor. He gave me a contract to clean small offices. Then rental properties. Then move-out cleanups. In 3 years I had 4 employees. In 5 years, 23. By year 7 I had started commercial property management. One day Jessica stood in my office and said, "Do you realize you own the kind of building we used to clean?" I said, "Don't make me emotional. I have payroll." She laughed. "Girl, you have payroll and trauma." I said, "Both are expensive." In the 8th year I bought a gated property outside Columbus. People called it a mansion, but I did not like that word. To me it was just home. A brick driveway, an iron gate, a big kitchen, guest rooms, and a closet where no one could lock away my documents and hide them from me. I kept security at the gate because clients came and went for business, and honestly I wanted privacy. I had zero contact with my mother. Sometimes a relative would send me a screenshot. "Your mom is asking about you." I never replied. Then one Tuesday afternoon my security guard Anthony called. "Miss Brooks." "Yes, Anthony?" "Ma'am, there are 2 elderly people standing at your gate." I looked up from my laptop. "Do they have an appointment?" "No, ma'am. They say they're your parents." My hand froze on the mouse. "My parents." "Older woman." "Older man." "The woman says her name is Karen. The man says Richard." I leaned back in my chair. 8 years. Not one birthday call. Not one apology. And now they were at my gate. Anthony asked, "Should I send them away?" I looked out the window. The late afternoon sun was falling across the driveway. The coffee on my office desk had gone cold. I smiled and said, "Keep them outside the gate. I'll speak to them on the camera." Anthony said, "Yes, ma'am." I opened the security app. My mother was standing on the screen. Her hair had turned white and her shoulders were hunched. Richard was with her, but his body language had changed. He did not look confident anymore. Cheap brown jacket, worn shoes, and a plastic folder in his hand. I turned on the intercom. "What do you want?" My mother looked toward the camera. "Emily." "Yes." Her voice broke. "Honey, "Can we come in?" I said, "No." Richard immediately said, "Now hold on. We drove 3 hours." I said, "Congratulations." My mother quickly said, "Please. We just need to talk. You had 8 years." He said, "I know. I made mistakes." I looked at Richard on the screen. Mistakes. Richard cleared his throat. "Look, we're family. Let's not do this through a damn speaker." I said, "This speaker is enough." My mother started crying. "We lost the house." I stayed quiet. She said, "Richard got sick. Medical bills. Then the mortgage. Everything went bad." Richard immediately said, "It wasn't just me." My mother looked at him. "Richard, stop." I asked, "And why did you come to me?" My mother lifted the folder. "We need a place to stay. Just for a little while." I did not laugh. I did not even feel like laughing. There was only a calm kind of stillness. I said, "Do you remember when I told you I had nowhere to go?" My mother closed her eyes. "Emily. Do you remember? Front porch. Rain. My clothes on the lawn. Mrs. Patterson behind the curtain. You said get out of here." Richard said, irritated, "That was years ago. Are you really still holding on to that?" I said immediately, "Try me." He went quiet. My mother said, "I was wrong." I asked, "About what?" She looked confused. "What? What were you wrong about? Say it in detail." She looked away from the camera. "I should not have kicked you out. And I should have listened to you. And," Richard said, "this is ridiculous." I spoke through the intercom to Anthony. "Anthony, if he raises his voice again, ask them to leave." Anthony's voice came through. "Yes, ma'am." Richard's face turned red. My mother said quietly, "Richard did use your card." I looked at the screen. "When did you find out?" He was crying. "The next week." For a few seconds, everything was silent. I said, "The next week?" She said, "I found the receipt in his truck." I gripped the arm of my chair. "So you knew 8 years ago?" Richard snapped, "Karen, shut up." This time my mother looked at him and said, "No. I'm done." I said, "Why didn't you call me?" My mother did not answer. I asked again, "Why?" She said, "Because I was ashamed." I said, "No. You weren't ashamed. You chose that staying with Richard was easy and making me the villain was easier." She cried and said, "I'm sorry." I said, "That's cute. Real cute." Richard stepped closer to the camera and said, "Listen, Emily. Your mother is old. She needs help. You have all this." He gestured toward the driveway inside the gate. "You can spare a room." I said, "I can." My mother looked at the camera with hope. Then I said, "But I won't." My mother's face fell. "Please." "No." Richard said, "You've got some nerve." I said, "I developed that nerve in a Walmart parking lot. Because of both of you." He said, "We're done here." I said, "Exactly." Then an idea came to me. It was not a loud revenge moment. There was no shouting. Just the kind of poetic justice life sometimes makes you wait for. I said to Anthony, "Don't open the gate. But give them an envelope." My mother asked, "What envelope?" I opened my desk drawer. Inside it was a printed list of emergency charity contacts, shelters, senior housing programs, legal aid, food assistance, and motel vouchers. My company funded a holiday drive every year. I took out the list, put a sticky note on it, and told Anthony to take it to the gate. On the sticky note I had written, "Call them. Don't come back here." Anthony handed the envelope through the bars of the gate. My mother took it. Richard pulled out the paper and read it. "Shelters? Are you kidding me?" I said, "No. This is the advice I should have been given. Find somewhere safe." My mother said very quietly, "Emily, I'm your mother." I said, "You were that night too." She went silent. Richard threw the envelope on the ground. "Come on, Karen. She's heartless." My mother picked up the envelope. For the first time she pulled her hand away from Richard. "Don't touch me." He turned toward her. "Excuse me." My mother said, "I said don't touch me." I watched on the screen. The sentence she should have said 8 years ago she was saying outside my gate today. It was late. Very late. But at least this time she said it. I spoke through the intercom one last time. "Karen, the number for legal aid is on page 2. If you truly want to get away from him, call them. If you only want a room in my house, the answer is no. She said, will you ever forgive me? I said, I don't know. But not today. Richard walked toward the parking area. My mother stood in front of the gate for a few seconds. Then she looked at the camera and said, I am sorry, Emily. I turned off the intercom. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the legal aid office. My mother had applied for protective housing. I did not get personally involved, but my foundation had already given that program a grant. The grant was not under my name. It was under the company's name. She never found out that indirectly, I had paid for the bed she slept in safely that first night. Richard later left me 2 voicemails. Pick up the phone. Then, you think you're better than us? I deleted both. 6 months later, my mother sent a letter. It had fewer excuses and more details. She wrote that she had found the receipt the next week. She wrote that Richard had isolated her too. She wrote that she had been a coward. She used that word herself. Coward. I read the letter, folded it, and put it in the kitchen drawer. I did not reply. Even now people ask me, if your mother came to the gate again, what would you do? I say, depends. Is she asking for help or is she asking for a house? There is a difference. I did not leave her on the street. I gave her the resources I was never given. But I did not open my gate. Some doors once closed need more than sorry to open again. That night she threw my clothes on the lawn. 8 years later I gave her an envelope, and this time I was the one inside the gate. If you think I did the right thing, like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell too, and tell me in the comments, if your own mother threw you out of the house in the middle of the night, would you open the gate 8 years later or not?